super excited to be able to introduce Niels Schillewaert, or close anyway. He is co-founder and partner at Human8, one of the world's leading strategic insights agencies. Niels has combined entrepreneurship and commercial research with academic research throughout his career. He is the professor of marketing and an adjunct professor at the Werk Business School. Close, huh? Good. All right. He obtained a PhD in applied economic sciences from Ghent University, and he was an award-winning ISBM doctoral fellow at Penn State. His research has been published in leading scientific journals such as the Journal of Marketing, the International Journal of Research and Marketing, the Journal of Services Research, the Academy of Marketing Research, Industrial Marketing Management, the Journal of Business Research. Okay, so do you have a lot of students?
No.
Oh, look, that's really impressive then,
Good
right?
connections.
Yeah. Niels is a frequent speaker at international conferences, including ours, and he's the former president of ESOMAR, the Association of Global Insights and the Analytics Community. And we're super excited to hear you talk today. So let's go get it. All right.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone. When I won that award, the ISBM, that was 99. I was 6 then. So things are evolving, and time is flying. I know it's a stereotypical thing to say, but it's true. And I have a lot to thank to Penn State and the ISBM in particular. And I learned so much, amongst others, from Gary. And when I came, from Belgium, I was, all of a sudden in this, big university, and for me, what was then a new culture, which I really liked, and I could go on that. But I had a meeting with Gary one day, and I gave him my working paper, and I was really nervous. And by the way, he said, "Let's meet at 6." And I said 6 p.m. and he said, "No, 6 a.m. That's a different story. And he had already played a game of watch and things like that. But he read my paper and he said, "It's interesting, but not relevant." And I said, "Okay, thank you for the open feedback. What do you mean with relevant?" And he said, "Well, whatever you do or whatever research you do, whether it's practical or academic, try to look at what the impact is. Does it make things better? Performance of a company, performance of a unit, of a department, of an individual." And so for me, that was a big lesson learned. And it's probably something I've done as well. To be honest, having worked in an insight company, some of our clients, they did research and they shouldn't have. And one of the reasons was that they did it because of a check the box mentality, or because a decision was already been made. So those are really bad situations and contexts to do research in. And the tie to this presentation is exactly that, is that over the course of the years in my role as an NSchillewaert, the industry association, we've looked at what does performance look like of an insights function in a company. So that's what this presentation is about. And it's October-ish, this fall. But ever since, there's super fast had a lot of questions about AI. And so I've included, because I also know it's a topic, and Amir has talked about it, I also included some of that in the presentation, because one of the pathways to impact is in fact to use technology. And then, this today, and for probably the rest of our future, it's going to be AI. So that's why supercharging human insights is the subtitle. What have we done? A little bit on the methodology. It's actually a partnership between Human8, the company that I co-founded with a couple of friends of mine in the late 90s, and the WFA, which is the World Federation of Advertisers. We did a lot of roundtables, expert interviews. You see some companies here, and we did a small quantification, about 50 plus surveys. That's not too big of a sample, but as you will see, the results and the directions are very clear. What you will see is that a lot of these companies are B2C. Some, like Essity or Polaris or Nissan, have a B2B component to it. I can already tell you that when we did have a number of B2B companies in the sample, and the results in terms of impact and performance and the drivers that surround it are not different. So whether you're in B2B or in a B2C company, when you look at the performance of an insights function, it's fairly stable and it's the same story. So what are we talking about? We're talking about how can an insights function in a company have business impact? And there's a couple of things that the experts told us, both quantitatively as well as qualitatively, is that first of all, no surprise, insights functions need to generate a deep human understanding. And deep is really deep. It's not a one-off shot. And I'll repeat that a couple times. Many insights functions are in an operational support mode, and you test 100 concepts. That's important, but it shouldn't be the crux of what an insight department does. What an insight department needs to do is provide perspective. And you can only provide perspective if you know, we may debate about the semantics or the meaning of it, but if we build knowledge, if you become, as an insights function, the central nervous system of a company. So we need to generate deep human understanding and also combine that with business understanding. And that goes into strategy. That goes into having that impact in terms of where the company needs to go. And oftentimes that doesn't happen. An insights function, I'll come back to it. Many of them are just under the umbrella of marketing. I'm not saying that's bad, but it does limit the scope of what an insight department can do within a company. And this one also here, the work before and after the work is as important as the work. What I mean with that is researchers often focus just on the methodology and the data collection. But the preparation and understanding of the why of the research and the decisions you need to make and the aftermath, by design, that's crucial, the work before the work, but also the work after the work. Once it's done, how many research reports have you seen? You got one presentation and classified, it's never used again. What a shame. You need to reuse what's already there. So the work before the work and the work after the work are crucial when you think about business impact. So this is the scale. I'm showing it for a couple of reasons, but this is the distribution on the question that, you know, from the quantitative, the insights, our insights function has a direct impact on overall business performance. Couple things, it's a spread. There's about 1 in 5 that self-evaluates, which is quite strong. Themselves is 6 on 10, which is quite mediocre if you ask me. The median is at 8. And there's about 1 in 4 that really says we're doing an awesome job. And they give themselves a 9 or a 10. The reason why is what you'll see coming back is I'll divide the low performers, I'll look at the high performers and the excellent performers. The low performers is everybody below the median of 8. The high performers, everybody above. And I'll make a subsection within the high performers. Those are the people, that 26% that gave themselves a 9 or a 10. All right, so just bear, if you see that 3 categories, that's based on this scale. What we also see is that it's a journey. There's a lot of insights departments that aren't there yet. And especially only 10%, even just barely 10%, say themselves that in terms of maturity, they're really well advanced. And I'm sure if you do it again, although this is only a couple, well, maybe let's say a small, not even a year old, with the whole thing of AI, a lot of people don't know what to do and how to deal with it. So the advancedness probably will shift. So it's a journey. And what I'll do during the presentation, I'll present you 5 pathways to get to the left side of that spectrum and to advance. You will see that some of them are related. There's not one path that's better than others. I have at least no indication of it. But I will tell you that some paths are more difficult than others. And depending on your context and depending on the company culture that you're in, some of these pathways may be easier to follow than others. First pathway is what these industry leaders told us or said. It's all about democratizing insights. It's about providing access. It's about providing attention. It's about making sure that we go from data to insights to actions. And a lot of researchers, including myself, we're not very good marketeers of our own product. We stick with the methodology and we really think it's rigor, and we sometimes lose ourselves a little bit in that. And sometimes, you know, we don't see that it's sometimes better to be approximately right and just move on and go to the next phase and then learn, go back. No, sometimes we get stuck in it. So that's why there's own it and lean in as an insights function is super important. And a lot of it is also around stakeholder management. And this is it's a long sentence, but curating insights and engaging in strategic business planning to go beyond marketing mix recommendations and traditional market research. This is the agreement on that statement between low, high, excellent, so top 25, above the median, and below the median. And you see that there's a big impact. So when it comes to having impact as an insights function, when you're doing that, go beyond the traditional marketing mix, which is typically concept testing and advertisement testing, maybe some pricing research, but you know, even then the pricing research is often not very strategic. It's one-off. If you go beyond that supporting role from marketing, you see that the performance, at least the self-rated performance, goes up, right? So stakeholder management, I'll come back to it in the second pathway as well, is super important. And maybe it's that's a shift, mind shift for many researchers, because if you ask researchers what they do, they will tell you, we'll understand people, we want to understand consumers, we want to get as close to consumers as possible. But they forget that it's as important to get close to stakeholders within your company. Because if you don't get the message across, if your insights aren't used, if they are just vertically classified, then it doesn't go anywhere. So democratizing insights is super important. Second pathway, related to it, centers around the idea of triangulation to create a holistic understanding. And what we mean with that is that when you talk to insights experts, and there's a whole debate about whether data science is a separate, you know, entity in a company, or whether it's under IT, or whether it's together with insights. There's different models. I've seen them all. But what is a common thread is that if you do data science or heavy analytics, you need sense makers. You need people that translate those data into something meaningful. We're very data rich, but insights poor. And that's a crucial thing. And you can achieve that by triangulating. What we mean with that is you look at the same phenomenon, but from different perspectives, with different methods, with different data, and you try to come up with a common story around the reality in your market, in your company. This is the answers or the agreement to, does your insight function have an effective interface with these departments? And the data science, you know, again, there's a piece in the paper that goes more in depth on that. Whether or not your data science is a separate, you know, with its own data lake and, you know, a separate unit or not, I don't think that's particularly important. You can debate on whether you should put them together or not. But an effective interface with that data science department and your insights department is crucial. Again, you see that the high performers and the excellent performers, you know, the performance, they have a much better interface than the ones that are low performers. Same for the C-suite. If you do not have access as an insight department to the C-suite in one way, shape, or form, you're much less effective. It's much less good to make sure that you have impact on the business. So we need sense makers, but we need sense makers that can do storytelling and that also have a collaborative mindset. And typically that's not in the skills of a researcher, to be honest. Trained to do methodology, trained to do rigor, trained to reduce bias and errors, not necessarily to do a people and a selling job within the company. But it's become that much more, and for sure in the last 10 years. So pathway number 2, generate a holistic understanding, triangulate data through storytelling, and make sure you have good interfaces developed with other departments in the company. A third pathway goes to your session earlier, just this morning, JT, and the one yesterday too, is that insights departments and professionals should try and focus more on what we call transformational future projects. And I won't repeat what you did. I loved your session, but we need that. One of our experts, lady from LVMH, who was a CMO, said, what I expect my insights function to do is to be my GPS to the future, my navigation to the future. And JT, you said futures. It's exactly what happens with a GPS. There's a traffic jam, there's an alternative route. And depending on what you come across, you need to be prepared. What is the alternative route? So that analogy of a GPS and from by design already, saying there's 3 roads to drive to New York or whatever destination. That idea is what an insight department should be doing. One of the reasons is that remember Heineken, for example, they're doing quite a bit. P&G, it allows senior conversations. I'll come back to the C-suite, and I just already had the interface with the C-suite. If you talk about the transformation of the business, anticipating the futures of the company and the industry, that's C-suite language. You get access to it. So it provides you an opportunity to show what you're doing and who you are. And, just another statistic, if you are that proactive is important here too. Take the lead into problem-solving insights that are transformational for the business. Again, your performance goes up. Got another paper I've written for SMR in there too. Your companies studying insights functions that engage in foresighting are like triple higher performers than the ones who don't. Now, there's a challenge to that, though. And JT, I'm not sure if you would agree with me on that, but some of these insights professionals said there's a challenge with getting engaged or getting these projects on the agenda. There's very few executives and, let's say director level up that have the skill to do futures work. And it's a skill that is, this better. It's a skill that's hard to scale. And if it's not something you regularly do, it sounds very new and like, where do I start type of thing. So executives are frightened, if you want, or challenged by the skills it needs. And well, at least in my track in business school, I never learned about futures as methodologies. I'm very happy to hear that you have that in Houston. The second one, sorry.
It's okay to ask questions?
Of course.
So, that's a very interesting point. So where I said, you always have to be your quarter short term, and you always have to think long term.
Yeah.
That's part of the job that some of us are interested with. As you think about insights and as they come up to the C-level to talk through, what's your recommendation on how they split their focus versus looking out versus solving today's problem? Because I guarantee you, every executive has both at the same time, and just constantly firefighting going on. If you're publicly traded, it's orders you gotta think through. Something's going at the plant, something's going on with the customer versus, okay, how do I take my growth trajectory, which I think I'm gonna talk this afternoon. So help me, how should the insights team should think through when they interact with the C-suite?
Yeah. I said there were 3 challenges. One was the skills. The second one is the time horizon, exactly what you're saying. It's very hard for these projects to be plugged in anything longer than the business cycle of maybe 3 to 5 years. So that challenge for sure. And then the stakeholders as such who are focused on, getting their results. So you're spot on. That's the challenge with this. Feel free to compliment or anyone in the room as well. My hunch would be it's like it's not change management, but it's showcasing. And you can't do these every year. You shouldn't probably. But if you do it, you need to plan for it. And I think you need stakeholder involvement from the C-suite. If your CEO, quote unquote, doesn't agree, you won't. So you need to market it internally, that futures project. I also think it's belief. There's companies that don't believe in it and that will say, we've been doing it for 20 years and we'll keep on doing it. In a way, tough luck. I would probably not fit in an environment like that. I'm not saying that should be 80% of your time as an insights function, but you should be at least a big stakeholder in doing these projects, and they should be on your horizon or on your agenda for doing them and taking the time to carve out, because it's really about strategy. I'm not sure if you have a
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an art a bit, right? And it's different, and specifically with signals and things like that, if you can, or even vision, if you can bring that in, and this is part of what you do in this work, is you try to bring it relevant to today. You still got to make it relevant to today. And with director levels and above, it's really interesting. You can give them lots of interesting things. It's not too distracting, but they kind of get a flow of this. And then one of those things happens early, and they recognize it externally from you. And they go, I heard about that. And they go, oh, yes. And then they start telling all their friends and their directors, and they get really excited. Once they change in that way, then they're like, okay, what am I missing? And then they're ready to come to you to adopt it. So it's really getting them working at their pace, but always being on their horizon.
And indeed, the showcasing, the recognizability, like, oh, we did talk about that, or at least something that was similar enough to, oh, this may happen. Maybe not exactly that, but you're predicting.
Exactly.
But that's what you're going for.
Thanks, Niels.
All right, so pathway 3, focus on more transformative futures of the business. Pathway 4, I labeled this accountability, and it's multidimensional and probably the most difficult and challenging of all. In a time where budgets are under pressure, where every insights executive tells us we are understaffed, under-resourced. In fact, in all dimensions, technology, 60% under, all of these, at least 50% of our sample said we're under-resourced. Even in business intelligence data, that was surprising to me. So don't we have already enough data? And probably it has to do with the sense making. But in an era like this, there's more resources needed. Secondly, what it boils down to is, and I'm coming back, and I'll repeat it in the fifth pathway as well. It's not only, insights should not only be there to prove the ROI of marketing investments. It needs to prove its own return, right? It needs to make sure that the investments that you make as a company in insights and analytics bring a return. It's related to being a bad marketeer of our own product as researchers, but that has to do with it. And you can do it by design. But it's very challenging. And some people also said, some executives said, what we sometimes do is reverse it, not necessarily show what the impact is of what we have done. But if something goes bad, if something doesn't work, if something fails, what is it that we haven't done? And in that perspective, did we do diligent consumer market intelligence research, future project, whatever? So sometimes that's also return. So ROI could be more qualitative as well. But here too, there's an effect between the high and the excellent, or a difference between the high and the excellent performers. High and excellent performers, about 40% says that they do assess the long-term impact of their insights practice on the business. And one thing that comes up a lot, which is a problem because this statistic, and even this one, isn't very high. So this is really under development or probably only present among these well-advanced insights departments. But the whole training, upskilling is a major issue. 0% of the low performers say they have anything like a structural training program. And again, referring to AI, it's going so fast. It seems like many insights departments don't know what to do first now and what to do after all. So this is probably the biggest challenge and the most difficult pathway to generating business impact.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
We do a lot of work in this space and we're often asked how to measure. So we have a couple of measures we recommend. I'd be curious to know what other people might be using and whether these are things that people would find useful. So one is what we call an actionability ratio, which is basically insights that have been put into action versus the number of insights that have not been put in action. We just call that maybe you all have a different name for that, but we internally, with our customers, refer to that as an actionability ratio. And another measure that we use around insights is what we call strategic plan influence. So I don't know if other people have examples of measures, but those are two that we help our customers develop. I'd be curious whether you make recommendations for something else or other people have better ideas or different ideas.
I think those are two great measures. I have a couple of examples
Okay, great.
that have some measures coming in. One of the things we've done quite a bit is measure before and after. And like, you know, do a metric of things like how well do you feel you know your business, or how much has insights influenced your day-to-day behavior, a little bit similar to what JT just said. Did a study for so a long time ago already for Unilever, and we had we presented the results and all the market research studies and yada yada yada. And part of the presentation or delivery was that we went with executives to do store checks or to do ethnography themselves, and they just got a simple task. And it was not about coming back with a new insight. It was with, you know, creating empathy so they would be walking in the shoes of their consumer. And it was eye-opening because then these executives, when we measured it, the metric of how well do you know your consumer went up significantly. Also, in the way they go to a supermarket, they would start to observe continuously themselves.
Yeah.
So it's more of a behavioral change.
Yeah, behavioral. You would
Yeah.
probably put that in actionability,
Yeah.
but I do like the idea of maybe separating that out. That's kind of an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Behavioral change or
Yeah.
whatever, that could be
Yeah.
because the challenge you have with some insights, to your point, and maybe some of the other conversation, and it's relevant mostly around the foresight of futures, is that you have a longer time horizon. So being able to make the direct link from an insight to a result can take a long time. But the behavioral change could be an interesting measure.
Yeah. I like your actionability ratio, and because that takes care of what often is used as a metric is, okay, how many ideas and, you know, insights have we generated? Yeah,
No one cares
duh.
about that.
That's
They only care about which ones were put into
Exactly.
practice.
And probably probably the interesting thing is there too, the ones that weren't put in practice, why was that? That could be a resource thing.
Yes. Yes.
So if you separate that out and if you look at that metric a little bit deeper, I think that's a good one.
We do look at that, we call that peel the onion, so
Yeah.
to speak, conversation. And interestingly, sometimes the reason is money,
Yeah.
Resources, not invented here. That's not the way we do things like that, which are
Yeah.
telltale signs in themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else who has experience with measuring the
Just
return?
interested if you score that on like how many, and that's good to have, hey, we looked at 50 things, but we put 5 in.
Yes.
Is that better than we looked at 10 and we put 9 things in? Yeah, I'm just curious how that, is there one better than the other? Is, you know, hey, we threw the net out really, really wide. We looked at 100 different projects. And then we assessed and we decided these were the best 3.
It's a good question, and it's similar to whatever benchmarking exercise you use. So I
Yeah,
would
is there a
say,
best practice? Or is
I would
it
say,
practice?
look at it over time. Obviously, there is some feeling to it. Some people or some companies will say 5 out of 50 is good. Others will say that 10 is a minimum.
You're talking about the actionability
Yeah.
ratio?
Yeah, the ratio.
Oh, okay.
Is there any kind of insights that you found with your clients and such that like, hey, we like to see this ratio, it feels like they're doing a great job, and this ratio feels like
That's
they're
a
not.
great question. And when they're first doing it early on in your work, the number is, it becomes less relevant. Over time, what they're looking for is improvement in that ratio and getting better at it. Because when you're first doing it, they don't know what the number should be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But you're looking, most people that we work with are looking for a minimum of a 3-to-1 ratio. That's kind of a threshold number. For every 3, so a minimum of 3 out of 4 insights are going to be actionable. 3 out of 3-to-1. So 3 actionable out of every 4.
I think the important thing is to agree as well,
Yes.
like what is an insight? You can debate about that too.
Yes.
And then you agree on, what is good enough, what is acceptable, set your action standards, track them over time.
The reason that number comes up a lot is that the finance organization has some influence over that number. Just letting you know where that number originated. It wasn't just made up. The finance people have this idea that we're paying people, we want to see something for the money that we're paying and for the systems.
One of the extra things, and it's a couple of examples, is to be bold as an insights function as well. Marketeers and advertisers do it all the time. They say, we've run this advertisement and that's the sales. Look, do the same with insights. Sorry. I know it's not a causal relationship, but at least there's an association and you're marketing whatever you do.
I'm surprised to hear that ratio in that. You think the more insights that you have, even though you're only acting on a few of them, at least in my mind, you're looking at everything. But you're only acting on these things that after you've looked at it.
Yeah, but you have to make choices.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Right, and back to our friends in the finance organization, just so we don't forget about how important they are to the things that we do. They will increase that number quickly over time. So you'll find yourself that you were at 3-to-1, and before you know it, you're at 8-to-1. You're gonna find that number, that pressure going up, getting better at really identifying actionable insights. So that has downside. I'd love to, we can talk about that. It has a downside that you begin to not look at certain things that you should be looking at.
Yeah.
Right, because.
put your bias in because you don't want
Yes.
to.
And I think this is an interesting part of the conversation. I don't mean to derail the conversation, but the accountability measure thing, this is where a lot of the organizations we work with, that can become kind of an issue.
absolutely. And you could start to go for the easy ones. So,
Right, exactly.
which is not necessary. So you always need to put it in strategic perspective. But for me, that's with everything in terms of metrics.
Yes.
It needs to have a
Well, you
balance.
have to step back and say, hey, we need
Exactly.
to find impactful things here
Exactly.
that are gonna improve our business. We're
That's
also
that's where the
food in the
strategic
fridge and-
planning influence number comes in.
Yeah.
That's why we use both of those, because if it was actionable, but it didn't really influence the future direction of future decisions and direction, then what's the point? So you need to
All right.
measures.
Yeah. Very good
Sorry.
conversation. Let's take it offline if you want to. I do need to look at the clock and go on. But you can tell by that discussion that it's an important pathway and a challenging one. Fifth one is all about gaining influence and creating headspace. Insights professionals tell us or told us there's so many things we need to make choices. We can't do it all anymore. And one of the solutions to gain that influence is to organize for business impact. And this is for me one of the nicest statistics. If we look at the current reporting line, 66% of all insights departments report into marketing. About 20%, only 1 in 5, report into the C-suite and functions as an independent unit that reports into the C-suite. Typically, these are also the insights functions that have data science underneath them. They have a little bit of a broader mandate, if you want, within their company. But if we ask them, what is the ideal reporting line? We see that actually the picture shifts, that ideally, a lot of insights functions, 6 out of 10 would want to report into the C-suite. And so it's about gaining that. If I would work on the client side, that would be the outcome for me, because that's a big signal that you can have strategic impact, is if there's a reporting line straight into the C-suite. Of course, there's multiple ways to Rome, as we say in Dutch. But at least that interface should be there, and you should have that mandate. It also avoids from remaining too functional and too just doing marketing mix tasks and go broader if you have that access. And by the way, we also did a split and looked at the ones that currently report into the C-suite. They want to change that, and that's like 100% says no. We never ever want to go back. We want to stay so that independence and even interdependence with other units is crucial. But again, researchers haven't been trained to work this way. You see a big uptake in, or a big difference between the excellent performers. 60% of them report straightly into the C-suite, and it really goes down very quickly if you look at the lower performance. So those are 5. Oh, sorry, there's one extra element to pathway 5, which is automation and technology and outsourcing. I won't go into the outsourcing because that's working with agencies and things like that. But I do think that if you work with agencies, you should challenge agencies to make sure that they help you and that they don't deliver you a 200 PowerPoint deck. Well, they can, but that's a deliverable probably that only needs to be, digged into at the right moment in time. You need workshopping. You need to appeal to the C-suite. You need agencies that can do that. But I want to make the segue later to AI is that you also see that the more technology-driven insights functions, you also find those among the higher performers, and the lower performers, they're already overwhelmed by the day-to-day, and now with the technology evolving, they really don't know what to do. But I'll come back to that later. I want to quickly take you through a couple of case studies that will tap into these different pathways. One is work that we do, ongoing work for SkyTeam, so Delta Airlines, KLM, Air France, the frequent flyer program. What we do is what we've developed is based on geolocation. There's an app. You come onto JFK, and then the app triggers a push notification, and you are asked as a frequent flyer to evaluate 9 touch points. Right? Very simple. You treat it as a Sky Priority customer or not. What's your NPS? And then you can upload a picture. But what we've also done is based on that, so there's 5,000 high-value customers that are in there. We also have a research community, a selection of these of 1,500 passengers that all of a sudden, there's a touch point that consistently, goes down. Okay, why is it? Can we get to the why of this instead of the data? The data is showing a signal. We want to get to the why. But we also invite some of these frequent flyers in what we call mega-do debates and brainstorm sessions and live surveys with executives. So we bring them close almost into the boardroom. And if you look at the impact, and this is where a metric comes in, we regularly measure the increase, if you want, in consumer or customer centricity among executives, and you see. It's overwhelming. 80% says they envision strategy better. 80+% says they understand needs better. So it impacts their daily behavior. And we also test a lot of new concepts. I have more examples of that. But maybe here, this visual, this holds the middle between VOC, touchpoint analysis, and we have an escalation system. So whenever a metric is not good, that piece of information gets pushed to one of the 20 airline responsibles. So they get immediate feedback. They see dashboards almost in real time moving. But it also becomes strategic and opportunities to deep dive with that community if we add pictures to it. Because then if somebody says, I wasn't treated as a Sky Priority member, but adds a picture of the check-in, which was disorganized and there was no compliance in terms of, zone 1 boarding or whatnot, that's very actionable, and you can understand it better why that person would give you that rating. And that's a lot of data, but we often get to the why and do deep dives in that. And that's just the metrics in terms of the impact that we do. Work a lot for Philips, and Philips wants to bring meaningful innovation. And what they mean with that is they want to touch and improve people's lives significantly. And if you look at a product-centric, the red curve, a product-centric approach to innovation is typically stage gates. stage gated, sorry. It's, project after project after project. What we installed was a more people-centric approach to it, and all based on design thinking. So it doesn't have, that design thinking is not necessarily a methodology you learn as a research professional. But if you infuse it, you become more than just a data supplier. So we developed a program that is basically continuous learning. And if you look at the impact for Philips, I have a paper if you're interested in that. This is the impact of the overall project and the continuous learning. So one of the two journeys focuses now on underserved communities, project NPS of +70. But the social impact, which is beyond research, it's within Philips' strategy, improving the lives of over 535 million people in 2022. Awards, this study, this approach won awards in the industry and in the innovation industry. So these are just, elements of how to prove and market ourselves and go beyond, the innovation that we've launched. Here's one innovation. This is engaging fun oral care for kids, where then we measure with parents what the impact was of the what's it called again? The design a pet brush. And so it's with stickers, it's an app, and it, makes kids find fun in brushing their teeth and do it longer, which is something you want to do for parents, right? So these are ways we try to, and obviously, by the way, I have to say, as an agency, you can't do that if you don't have the buy-in of, in this case, Philips, right? They need to believe in that too. Here's another one. A lot of it has to do with innovation, by the way, but for AB InBev. So here the goal was to reduce the cycle time of innovation from years to weeks, but also increase the share of innovation within the industry in terms of number of products that were launched. We've been doing this consecutively for 3-5 years. So over 100 executives of AB InBev meet for 4 or 5 days. We let them immerse and learn and get inspired with research that we've done previously, right? Obviously, this is just a little bit staged in terms of the insights that they get. We have professional sketchers that would probably be AI by now. But we overnight, so let's say on day 2, we've got 100 ideas. We overnight screen those ideas and reduce them to say 15. They get the results the next day and work on them and optimize them. So they all have to then parallel present their ID screening and iterate and optimize. So all executives do that, and you create buy-in by doing this. It goes on, it goes on. Somebody wins the, let's say, hackathon or however you want to call it, at AB InBev. But more importantly, this is the impact that we wanted to achieve. More than 50% increase in share of innovation over 4 years, and from insights to shelf in 100 days or less. These are a number of actually launched products. I can't tell you about sales numbers. That would be great. But trust me, AB InBev puts the sales numbers to it of each of these. Here's a cool one that goes a little bit more into the futures and the semiotics and some ethnography, but much less than your typical research. So P&G needed to launch or position a brand, Sivo, that basically communicates that it's effective, but also harmless. And it's an insect repellent because, most insect repellents, the chemical and the impact on your pets and your kids. And, you spray and shut all the windows and then get out for an hour. So this brand had to communicate that it's harmless and effective at the same time. And what we did is we did rapid prototyping. You can see a couple on the right-hand side, but also looked at, for example, connected homes and technology and how what signals are there to be used for a brand that wants to communicate that it's effective or harmless. We looked at nature, right? It's harmless in a way. You get plants that, eat insects or birds, and how is that going and what can we learn from nature to position that brand. And the brand was labeled bioselective. And bioselective as a word communicates that it's harmless and effective at the same time. Launched in the US and fastest growing insect control brand in the last 4 years, launched in Target and Home Depot. And this is some of the visuals as to how it's done. So it uses much more semiotics. This is very, this is more on the transformational side, if you want. Detroit Energy Company, more of a, I would say, a traditional approach. And this also has to do with the company culture. And, you know, DTA better than I do. But what we did is we developed an agile strategy. We did some internal assessment. What are the priorities to focus on as a company? And then have 3 phases: knowing and understanding the customers across the population, benchmark and measure the progress, and then make sure we have agile solutions for actionability. We did a fairly detailed segmentation, micro and macro segments, developed personas. This is about, you know, making sure it's alive. And, you know, you give these personas, all of these have names, right? And so people can picture, oh, it's Anna, or it's John, or it's not. So you bring those to life consistently. This is marketing inside the company. Second step is once you've done that so typically research would stop here, right? Even and wouldn't even market it. But then what we did or put on top of that is things like Net Promoter Score, benchmarking within the energy sector as well as outside of the energy sector. Look at VOC and integrate those data as well. And how does it tie to these segments? And then we built a community of 26,000 people that all went through the segmentation typing tool. So we know of these 26,000, which of the segments they belong to. And based off of that, you develop new products, new service deliveries. And this is a way, although I'm not giving you any numbers, that you can't get out of it anymore. It's installed into the business process. So that's another way to prove or to make sure you have impact, right? So it's taking segmentation up to the next level. This goes into app developments, communication. It's used for tactical things, but it's a very strategic approach because the capability that you've built, the engine that you've built is tremendous. All right. Any questions? No?
Okay, we're open for questions.
I do have
One more.
AI a little bit if you want me to fly you through it and how we use it.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So I can do that in 10 minutes or so. So we get a lot of questions of, you know, how do you use AI at Humanate? And one of the things I say is you won't be beaten as a human by AI. You will be beaten by another human who uses AI. And that's a shift. So whether you like it or not, yes, there's a lot of downsides to it, but it shouldn't, you know, prevent us from going along. So our stance is that AI should supercharge humans. And this is an application of how we do it within innovation research. And we have an innovation practice, as you could already see from my case studies. And if you think of innovation and AI, it's very similar as a process. Because innovation, if you look at it, this is the Nike Go Fly Ease. It's a sneaker. And it's a sneaker that people don't use their hands to get in and out of. It's a very well-framed problem because one of the things that you see, especially with, you know, for example, disabled people, it's very hard to get. You need to, and it's a struggle. And then they need to do the shoelaces and things like that. So it's the inclusive design. The vestibule hinge, you know, and people use their toes. So the hack use their toes to that's based on observational research. So regular shoes, people do it. My kids do it all the time. It drives me nuts. But the vestibule hinge design is based on a toothpaste cap. So you see it's elastic material that's around it. The key here is that this innovation is based on things that are already there. all of these things, the inclusive design, the toothpaste cap, it's all combining existing ideas. And that's exactly what AI does. AI also just combines ideas. You observe patterns, it tries to mimic them, and it creates something new by combining things. So by definition, innovation and AI work in very similar ways. But there's a number of problems, and I won't go into detail. Amir touched upon them yesterday. There's lack of diversity. AI wants to please, so it takes averages of averages of averages, and it just, you know, relatedly, it can hallucinate. It'll make up things because it wants to please you. Flatlining is when it comes to ideas, at a certain moment, it'll generate the same ideas all over again. And overtrust is something that some of the stuff really looks good. That visual that you saw is generated by Midjourney. If you look at those visuals they look good. So because it looks so polished, a lot of executives, well, it looks good, so it must be good. We shouldn't overtrust it either. We always need to be critical. So one of the things that we do in our innovation process is we need to keep control of the AI, and we need to feed it. This is what Amir also was talking about yesterday, the RAG, so the retrieval augmented generation. And that's what we talked about earlier. So AI needs human data. Otherwise, it can't function, and it needs fresh data. And what we do is we use the generative AI, but we've built our own agent called Molten, and we feed selected sources in there. And a lot of these don't go into the public domain anymore. So our clients, we've done either previous research, or our clients gives research that was done by someone else, or transcripts, focus groups. We put all of that in, and we feed Molten with that human fresh data. And so you keep control, and that's how you make sure you avoid lack of diversity, because you feed it with new data, and you make sure that it doesn't hallucinate or says something that's not based on an insight that you've had and that comes from your market and that is relevant to your business. In innovation, we need to be creative with AI too. And here, it goes into almost all of the issues and the challenges that AI brings about. But the key thing now is, do you speak prompt? Do your executives, do our researchers speak prompt? There used to be a time where you go to a focus group. So what do you train your moderators on projective techniques and on creative ways of, interacting with people? Well, now you need to train them on how to interact with an AI system. And it's similar yet different at the same time. Because figure this, you're now sitting on a huge pile of data. So the answers are there, and the AI system will combine it. It's now to you, or up to us as researchers, to make sure we ask the right prompts to the machine so that it generates useful results. And what we've done is, we have these are all tools, all prompts, all creative techniques that we've developed that are standardized to reframe an insight or a problem, to make sure that we have good ideation, and to make sure that we have concept optimization. So throughout the different phases of innovation. Here's an example of, these are all generated by Midjourney and AI. This is a retailer that wants to do plant-based meals that also drives behavioral change. So that's the innovations they want to get into. And at first you get to, logically, just like with humans, you get to simple ideas like storytime cooking adventures. But this is one that I like. So one of the projective techniques or creative techniques in innovation is called the brand alphabet. What would Google do? What would Facebook do? What would Ferrari do? And one of the things that came up is, what would Puma do for this plant-based behavioral change meat brand? And the system said this, oh, Puma, sneaker. Oh, it would have lights that every time you eat a plant-based meal, that it would light up. We made the Broccolite. So human, we thought that was a good idea, but maybe a little bit too far stretched for kids. But a bracelet would also be possible for this plant-based brand to produce and provide with samples. And so every time the kid eats veggies, the bracelet would start lighting up. So it's an AI-enabled idea, but humans took it to something that was relevant. But the brand alphabet exercise is a traditional exercise you would use in workshops, but we give it to the AI system and try to be creative with prompts. Again, just another example. So what this does, if you think about ideation, if we think about innovation, over time, what we want is we generate ideas, and these are boring, right? And then they're weird, and we need the weird ones to create wonderful ideas. And all of a sudden, we have really wonderful ideas, but it takes time. And not often, our clients or you as executives, you don't have the time. What AI does is, and the supercharging of humans with AI, it crushes that time frame, so you can get to the wonderful and the weird ideas quicker. And that's for me what AI does. So it's not only efficiency, it's also transformational. I'll let this quickly play if I may, and then I'm pretty much at the end, and it'll illustrate those prompts.
Another question, how did you create that video?
Some of our designers did, so it's not AI.
Yeah.
So the message is also, it's all about critical thinking, and AI needs a human eye. And you should think about what is it that you want to augment. And for me, like every technology, it can have three values. It could be automational, do the same things cheaper, faster. It could be informational, do the things that we do today at a better level, for us, more human-centric. And it allows you to do transformational things. Here, in this case, for innovation, go into divergent thinking. I know that was a really rapid flyover how we use AI. So we've talked about a lot of stuff. Business impact is business understanding and deep human understanding. I provided you with the 5 pathways if you want. And everything that we do today is technology enabled, AI enabled. By the way, I also say that technology doesn't solve problems. people do. Thank you very much.